Palantir CEO Alex Karp, very interesting interview here in the past 24 hours. I want to watch this one together and react to this one. There were some very interesting comments, okay? And as somebody that's a Palantir shareholder, there were some things that happened in this interview that I thought were not the best, and I think there were some things that happened in this interview that were pretty good. And I want to discuss those in this video because I know other folks got excited about certain comments that were made, and those aren't the comments that I necessarily am too excited about. There's other things that happened here that I want to point out here that I think are very, very important for everybody watching this video and anybody that cares about Palantir stock in general, okay? Now, in regards to Palantir stock, obviously it's been a very, very tough year if you've been riding the boat the whole year, right? I mean, the stock's down about 62%, which is right in line with Snowflake, which a lot of people group those two stocks together, even though they compete a little bit, but not full, across the board. But Snowflake's down about 59%. So both those stocks have kind of run right together. There's a big difference between Snowflake and Palantir, not just in the terms of their business models, but in terms of their valuations. I look at Palantir at this point in time in the $7 range or below $7 as an undervalued stock versus Snowflake. Believe it or not, even after its big fall, I actually believe that stock is still a little overvalued and it still has to come down more. I believe Snowflake has to fall under $100 to even begin to become even remotely attractive. But they have a lot of things to kind of work on there, whereas Palantir, I feel like, is just ahead of running a lot of metrics in their business model and getting to major profitability, I think, a lot faster than somebody like a Snowflake overall. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you're a Palantir shareholder and you want to join other Palantir shareholders inside our Palantir Discord chat, that will be the pinned comment down there. We got a lot of folks that are Palantir shareholders, and yeah, if you're looking to join us in there, you also get access to my main portfolio, my dividend portfolio, which every single stock in the dividend portfolio is green as green can be, and you get access to our full investor weekly report, which is absolutely amazing. So yeah, if you're a Palantir shareholder, that's a must to join in there. That will be pinned comment down there. Let's get into this.
Well over a decade, and certainly if you look from inception, building products for peace, so you could distribute vaccines and organize many of the most important institutions in the world. But of course, products of war. We believed and believe, if unlike most of our colleagues in Silicon Valley, if you are strong, you prevent the adversary from acting up, and that's why we thought this war might happen. We build products that allow you to do very high-end AI-enabled targeting. Most of the details we can't discuss, but our adversaries are very, very well aware now of their impact. These products have changed the course of history. They changed the power structure of America. And perhaps most importantly, as a former academic, our adversaries used to run around the world.
All right, this needs to be said, man. Because this is my second time watching this interview, right? I gotta say this. Alex Karp, stay in your dang seat, okay? You're worse than my kids. I mean, literally, my kids are better than you. If they need to go to the bathroom, they don't move around as much as you. Like, holy smokers, this ain't no jokers, dude. This was like an 8-minute interview, and you're up and down that seat and all around it. Holy smokes, man. Chill out. Calm down, man. You need to go to the bathroom, or what's going on here? Like, this is out of control. Did anybody else notice that?
We have a very significant business outside of America saying, well, America has liberty and entertainment and freedom, but we're better at fighting wars. We're better at building products of war. We're better at internal surveillance. And now, lo and behold, it turns out those of us who are purveyors not just of war products, but of liberty, most importantly, the United States of America, are not only better at entertainment and having fun, we're also better at building products of war. And that narrative, I think, is going to change the world, is already changing the world, because of the many things we're not allowed to say that have happened in the Ukraine, our adversaries know every single one of them. And so we are no longer viewed, America, as just, a place that produces the most important articles of liberty, but as a culture that builds the best software.
There's a lot I want to pick up on there. I guess
Karp has a, if you watch enough Alex Karp interviews and things like that, he has, and listen to enough conference calls, Alex Karp definitely has a view of the best way to win a war in today's day and age is not just having the best, tanks or the best planes or things like that, but it's also who has the best software. And who can have the most data on, let's call it, the other team, right? And it definitely makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense, right? If you can know exactly like what the best movement is, let's say, for instance, here's the best way we should attack, here's where they're positioned, here's why we should go this route versus this route. Like there's so many various factors there that if you're an army and you've got the much superior software to the other team, the other country, right? That can definitely be extremely, extremely helpful. And your chances of success go up dramatically. And I think we're honestly probably seeing that play out right now because, let's be honest, the high majority of folks thought that obviously Russia was just going to go into Ukraine and that was going to be like, it was going to be over quick, right? And what we're finding out is this is just a tough battle. And, most folks did not expect that. They expected Russia to roll in there and it was going to be game over and it was going to be lights out and it was going to be over quick. And it hasn't worked out like that at all. Even remotely close to that, right? It's been a kind of a brutal fight on obviously both sides. So it's clearly there's certain things that are going on there that's definitely helping on top of obviously other countries helping out with weaponry and things like that.
First thing, though, is I see these conversations happening in places like this forum, this idea that we have to move more quickly where things like software and new technologies are concerned. DoD and other entities are not doing enough, are not deploying enough. But then I hear you talk, and it sounds like maybe that's not necessarily the case, at least where Palantir is concerned.
A lot of tech companies are, now they're, not all, but, you have to, when we had our conversation last year, we were still in a phase where, most software companies, and certainly most companies in Silicon Valley, their basic view is how can we help the adversary while pretending to help America. So first and foremost, what we need to do in America is make sure that everyone, especially in Silicon Valley, is aligned with we are going to give our best products and our best technology to the U.S. government first, not second, fourth, and fifth, while pretending we care because we've got some crazy idea that no one cares about that makes us feel superior to everyone else. That's the most important thing. The U.S. economy, we're seeing this in our software sales in the U.S., and especially the U.S. government. Sure, there's a lot you can complain about, but it is the best at adaptation. We had to fight our way into DoD. People, because of the size and footprint of our work, they think we're insiders. We see the U.S. government not once, but twice, not to buy Palantir, but to buy the best software, and we won twice. And so the U.S. government has been iterating and adopting and adopting and adopting. Quite frankly, the larger problem is many of our allies are living in the 70s where hardware alone could work and spending all their money on local industry that isn't really that good at software. So I think the onus of us in technology is to really invest. Of course, most companies can't be focused on the U.S. military the way we are because it's core to our mission, but they can't be focused last on the U.S. military and then complain that it's too hard.
Is it changing now because of Ukraine?
Well, there's a lot that's changing. An already fairly good situation is getting better for technology companies because the U.S. economy and U.S. institutions in general are very pragmatic. They're much less ideological than in other countries. They're like, well, what worked? How did it work? How much did we spend on it? And what were the results? Is a very American way of looking at something. And it is exactly the way you look at it.
Because if you don't look at it like that in America, you're eliminated. It's as simple as that. There's too much competition in business in the United States of America. Way too much competition. At the end of the day, if you run a business, I don't care if it's a small business, mid-sized business, large business, and something's working for another business, and you don't adapt that, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to use that because my belief is da-da-da, you get eliminated over time. That's how you go under as a business in the United States. There's way too much competition in this country, right? And it doesn't matter if you're selling cheeseburgers. It doesn't matter if you're selling software. It doesn't matter if you're selling cars. At the end of the day, there's way too much competition, and you will be eliminated if you do not adapt and you do not choose the best product overall. And ultimately, with a company like Palantir, it is viewed as the tier one software-related product, and if you're especially a large corporation, that you have to consider using a Palantir. And that's one of the things that gives me confidence in a company like Palantir over the long term is if everybody I've talked to in this industry really views them as having the superior product that really knows these products inside and out. And so, therefore, if you have that superior product, you have the best product, over time, it's just about marketing and obviously spreading the word and getting your message out there, right? And having everybody realize, oh, this is the best product. Because over time, if you do that, you're going to win. Because in the United States of America, like I said, if companies don't adapt and they don't go with the best, you will be eliminated. It's as simple as that in this country, right? And that's not the same in all other countries, because other countries, it might be state-run, different corporations. They might have, kind of like monopoly-type business models. And it's just it's different, right? And then other countries just move very slow, and they're maybe focused on other things. The United States is so capitalistic still, thank goodness, that it's as simple as you get the best product or you get eliminated.
Implementation, whether it's a company or a government. And there's the outside version of what you're allowed to say, but the inside version, with all the data, a lot of which is classified, you see that it is not just a banality that we are in a software world. We are in a software world. And what's also interesting is what is America indisputably the best in the world at doing? Building software. Mm-hmm. And no one doubts it's interesting. If you ask most Americans, they'll be like, well, we're good at football. We're good at films that I never watch. We have a great finance industry. We're good at, having politicians that none of us really understand. We have a lot of aptitudes, but actually what we're the best at is building software. And it turns out for transforming your industry in hard times and winning against adversaries, it is the single most important thing.
It sort of speaks to what you talked about in your recent letter, which was you've shifted from insurgent.
And that's really true. The point he brought up there, I think is a phenomenal point. We are the kings of software in the world, and by a large margin, not really necessarily hardware, right? I mean, if you think about hardware electronics, I mean, many of the best companies that create hardware-related products actually are not United States of America companies, right? Even, if you look at Apple, they're kind of seen as like a hardware company. They don't create the best hardware. There's far better hardware. The iPhone, I don't care what iPhone, the newest one, whatever. They're not the best hardware. Like, if you think that's the best hardware for a smartphone, and I got 4 iPhones, okay, that I use. If you think that's the best hardware, like, you're just not very educated on the other hardware products that are out there from these other companies. Apple's so successful because of their software and how well all their products work together. Why do they have me in the ecosystem? Because I can respond to a text on my computer, on my phone, on my iPad. It doesn't matter. Just these little things that add up to a lot, right? I could take a call anywhere. I mean, just all these little special, like, little features that are all software related get you in their ecosystem and keep you in that ecosystem versus other companies that just don't do software as well. That's why Apple ended up winning and became the biggest company in the world, because of their software. Why did Microsoft become so massive? Because their you just run through these companies and you realize, oh my gosh, it's software, time and time again, right? And it's the truth. He's 100% on the ball, and I don't think enough people pay that attention.
Insider to incumbent, this idea of software as a prime, how big is that opportunity for Palantir?
Well, America spends about $800 billion on software. By the way, we're also very big in Britain and a number of other countries. So, to use a term I hate that financial people love, total addressable market, is probably, north of $900 billion.
So I use that term there, $900 billion, and a lot of people got jacked up about that. Oh, $900 billion. It's such a bunch of crap. And I'm glad he pointed out that he also doesn't like using that term, because at the end of the day, I hear companies do this all the time. Our TAM is ... number. It is some massive number. And it's like, dude, no. Okay, no. You could throw any number down. Imagine I start a burger chain restaurant, right? And I say, my TAM is, $600 billion, because that's how many burger places, how much revenue is generated. It's like, no, what's my realistic TAM? Okay. And that's what you have to view in, like, if I go back to even different companies I've identified over time, right, before they kind of, blew up, if we go through a stock like Tesla, right, I never looked at Tesla's TAM necessarily as the total addressable market. I thought Tesla was going to become, and they're starting to become that, like the biggest automaker in the world, right, and sell the most cars by the end of this decade. And so by doing that, I said, okay, who is the biggest automaker today and how many cars they move? And I found the biggest automakers sold like 10, maybe 12 million cars a year. And so I said, that's Tesla's realistic TAM, because Tesla's not going to sell every single car in the world, right? But I think they can get to a place where they become the biggest automaker, and the biggest automakers do around this number. So that's what my realistic TAM is. And so for a company, Palantir, Their realistic TAM that they might have the potential to get over time might be like $50 billion, $75 billion, something like that. Not $900 billion, although that would be phenomenal, but it's not that number. Their realistic TAM is probably like 50 to 75, okay? And so I'm glad he pointed out that he actually hates using numbers like that, because I do as well. It's such a BS number, and I see companies do it all the time. Our opportunity is $1.1 trillion, and it's just like, our TAM is, it's like, come on, man. Like, just, it's such a far-fetched number. It's irrelevant. It's literally irrelevant at that point in time.
And we believe we have the single most important components for adaptive warfare against a large adversary that's willing to allow their troops to die. So exactly what you saw in the Ukraine, and that the percentage of the $900 billion that we would be able to capture is obviously very large, because pragmatic people are like, well, I could spend $100 billion on something that maybe has marginal impact that our adversaries. By the way, when you're looking at value, you always have to ask, what is it that I can build the adversary can't build? And there's a lot of things that are going to shift simply because we're building things adversaries can also build. But software, they will not be able to keep up with us. And so more and more of that market is going to come to not just in Palantir's direction, but in the direction of people that can build software that is useful or critical for warfare.
I mean, we hear so much about China's investment in technologies. You mentioned surveillance states earlier in this conversation. I mean, it's the sort of king surveillance state, case in point, what we've seen play out in terms of protests and at least initial response to those protests in the last couple of days. Can we really counter China when technology and software are concerned? Are we really that much more dominant when they have a different business model and they've been much more aggressive on the government side?
They have a business model to control their citizens. And we will not surpass them at that. And thank God. We have a business model in America to increase liberty at home and to make sure adversaries that attack us or our allies pay a very, very heavy price. We need to stay focused on our business model. If it's about central control, either of economy or of your citizens, they win. If it's about distributed systems where you share information that's crucial for weapons of war with your adversaries, we have a huge advantage. We actually have allies and friends.
Nothing to add there. 100% in agreement.
Let's talk a little bit about the commercial side of the business, especially when you're talking about technologies that have been applied to, for example, evacuations in Afghanistan being the same type of technologies that are now being purchased by commercial entities.
Well, what we see is that the most important market in the world, the US of A, is also the most adaptive market in the world. Our commercial offering is flying off the shelf. We grew in the last 12 months 102% in the US.
I like that. 102% growth in the U.S. in the past 12 months for the commercial business, right? Now, something important for all Palantir shareholders watching us right now, okay? Something very important is, if you listen to like the Salesforce conference call, for instance, which I did inside the private stock group last night, what we heard was, Salesforce obviously talking about, and they're not the only company that's mentioned this recently, is the sales cycle being slower. And I believe even Palantir mentioned this on the last conference call, if I recall. The sales cycle being slower on the commercial side right now because there's obviously a lot of uncertainty. So, to get approval, you have to go way up the ranks. And so that is something that could hurt a company like Palantir in the short term. Obviously, that's not a long-term issue, right? But it is a short-term problem. And so if Palantir doesn't have the most exciting next 6 to 12 months with their numbers, I don't know if that's necessarily like it's the end of the world type situation, right? Because at the end of the day, like the sales cycle is getting longer for all these companies that sell any sort of product into big companies, right? But I love Karp bringing up the 102% growth in the U.S. in the commercial side over this past year. It's pretty unprecedented. It's an amazing number, and they have so much opportunity there to go in the future. It's insane, to be quite frank. Absolutely insane how much long-term potential there is just in the commercial market. That's why I'm in this stock. I mean, the government business is a government business. It's stable. It's going to grow bigger likely over time. But why I'm in the stock is because of the possibility that the majority of Fortune 500 type companies could use their software over time, and even a lot of mid-sized companies as well, right? Which would obviously grow Palantir into a giant corporation.
America adapts, and will, in the end, buy the single best products on the market. That's why we're succeeding, despite the fact that we're new to this game and by building out a commercial sales force and doing all sorts of things normal companies are doing, communicating with
the sales force for Palantir, for those that don't know, is actually relatively new. For a long time, Palantir didn't even have a real sales force. So they have so much to go on the sales end of this, and making folks understand why Palantir is a superior product for their corporation. They're still very early days in this game, and I think that's important for everybody watching this to understand.
Otherwise, adult people is not something we're particularly adept at, but we are very good at building software. The same software use cases that you have in government can be applied to American.
Do you think Wall Street truly understands what Palantir is doing, particularly on the commercial side, particularly given the fact that stock's down something like 60% this year?
Well, I think Wall Street largely understands we're a tech company and punishes all tech companies right now. The interesting thing about...
Well put. I like that, Karp.
Palantir is all of our products historically, whether it's our Intel product or it's the mapping togos, it's the AI product that's now changed the world, the product that we built for distribute the vaccine have been 5 years ahead of the market. Our commercial offering is 5 years ahead, 3-4 years ahead of what Wall Street probably understands. Wall Street will very well understand the value of Palantir as they begin to take effect.
So Alex Karp right there, very important comment. He believes Palantir software is, he mentioned 5 years, 3 to 4 years. So something between 3 to 5 years ahead of all competition, okay? So I think that's an important number to kind of understand where he thinks their product is at versus a competition and how far ahead they are and how many years it would take the competition to catch up. But also do keep in mind, if you're talking about the catch-up game, right, that would have to be Palantir has to stay still, right? And so they would have to like not improve anything they're doing, and then like everybody else keeps improving and their product gets much better over the next few years. So I think that's always kind of like a false way of looking at things, and I hear this talked about with Tesla as well, right? Oh, competition's coming, the competition is probably only a few years behind them in terms of this tech or that tech. Well, it's like, okay, what if Tesla just keeps improving, right? What if Tesla keeps innovating and they don't stand still? Where's Tesla going to be at in 3 or 5 years from now? And so I think this is just important to think with these companies that are ahead of the game, are ahead of the ball, and other people are trying to catch up to their actual product, right? What happens if that company that's in the lead just keeps expanding that lead? So I don't think that's talked about enough in the stock market, to be honest, and I think it needs to be.
Account of the fact that we're just outstripping everyone with our Foundry product. It will take a while, just like, honestly, when we were talking last year and I was saying, hey, we're going to do A, B, C, D. Well, that looks bad crazy. It's not bad crazy when Russia goes into a country in the software. And this is the exact same thing when it comes to Palantir's full value. And by the way, I would also say Palantir's always been over and undervalued, and clearly we're undervalued, but at some point we'll be overvalued again.
Clearly we're undervalued, he said. And he says, obviously Palantir's been overvalued or undervalued in the past. Clearly we're undervalued, he feels, okay? So how do I view Palantir? Do I view this as like a spec stock? Do I view this as like a safe investment? To be honest, the way I view Palantir is I view it something in between. I wouldn't put them in the speculative category, which there's certainly stocks that are in the speculative category. Palantir, it's just disrespectful to put a company that has their level of product and their level of customers, like the best customers, like to put them in the spec category. But I also wouldn't put them necessarily in the safe stocks category quite yet. They've got to reach much more critical profitability before I put them necessarily in the safe stocks category. I think over the next 2 to 3 years, they can potentially get into that safe stocks category. They're kind of in that in-between right now. And obviously there's incredible upside potential there, but there's also the question of this next year, if the sales cycle is slow on the commercial side, that could pull commercial numbers down in a major way, right? In terms of the government side, there have been some contracts that are postponed that should likely come in 2023, so that's the good news, and some of those contracts are very, very large contracts. So that's kind of the one cool thing about Palantir is they have the government side of the business, and then they have their obviously B2B side, right, the commercial side of their business. And so sometimes the commercial business is going to be what pulls this company through. And it's like, my gosh, did you see their numbers? While the government business is just a slacker, right? On other times, especially if you're in a weakening or a bad economic environment, the commercial business might be kind of lame and might be like, wow, the growth is really slow right now, right there, right? If you're in a bad economy or something like that, that can definitely be the potential. But the government, they love to spend obviously, when the economy's bad because the government's trying to get us out of that mess, right? So then the government business can pick up in a major way. Never mind if you have potentially global conflicts going over around the world, right? That can make them want to spend even more. And as budgets kind of get allocated and things like that, right? Deals come through that weren't there 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, okay? So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. As always, love to hear your opinion in that comment section. As always, if you're a Palantir shareholder, you want to join other Palantir shareholders, talk about the stock with other high-level folks that also own Palantir stock, check out the pinned comment down there and join our Palantir Discord chat. Much love as always, and have a great day.